My wife lied about being pregnant to trap me while I was working 2 jobs, so I walked away forever and left her begging with nothing. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I thought hard work could fix everything. For years, that belief guided me like a compass through exhaustion, loneliness, and the quiet ache of never feeling enough. I worked 2 jobs, one at a construction site during the day and another stocking shelves at night, because I wanted to give my wife, Ava, the kind of life she always dreamed of. Every morning started before sunrise. The smell of coffee barely reached me before I was already lacing up my boots. My hands were calloused. My back ached constantly. But whenever I saw the small smile on Ava's face, when she showed me something new she'd bought for the apartment, it felt worth it. I'd tell myself this is what love looks like, sacrifice. But love started feeling more like obligation. Ava began complaining that I was never around, that our marriage was losing its spark. I tried to reassure her. I'm doing this for us, Ava. So we don't have to worry anymore, I'd say. Wiping the sweat off my neck after a 14-hour shift, she'd sigh, glance away, and mutter, money's not everything, you know? Yet she never returned the things she bought or slowed down her spending. She liked the life my exhaustion built. Some nights I'd walk in after midnight, finding her scrolling on her phone, eyes dimly lit by the screen. I'd whisper, hey, I'm home, hoping for warmth, but her response was cold. Detached, don't wake me up next time. Still, I convinced myself it was just stress, maybe hormones, maybe boredom. Anything but distance. I ignored the growing silence between us, the kind that felt heavier than any shift I'd worked. I told myself things would get better once I earned enough to make her proud, but I didn't realize that while I was breaking my body to build our future, Ava was already building a lie that would shatter everything I thought I knew about love. A few weeks later, I came home from a double shift, barely able to keep my eyes open, and found Ava sitting on the couch with a look I hadn't seen in months, soft, teary, almost glowing. Before I could say a word, she blurted out, I'm pregnant. My heart stopped. All the fatigue, the stress, the sleepless nights, it suddenly felt worth it. I dropped my lunch bag and just stood there, staring at her. Are you serious? I whispered. She nodded, covering her mouth as tears streamed down her face. I wrapped my arms around her, laughing and crying at the same time. We're going to be parents, I said, the words tasting unreal. That night, I promised myself I'd work even harder, that I'd give our child the security I never had growing up. The next morning, I took on extra hours at both jobs. I didn't even question if this was what good fathers did. I'd picture tiny socks in the laundry, a crib by the window, Ava smiling as I walked through the door with groceries. Those thoughts kept me going when my body begged me to stop. But soon after, Ava's mood started shifting. She became distant, irritable. I'd ask, everything okay? How's the baby? And she'd snap, can you not stress me out right now? I figured hormones, nerves, maybe just first trimester anxiety. Still, she refused to go to her first doctor's appointment with me, saying she wanted to keep it private until it's safe. I respected that. Though a strange unease crept in, she spent more time locked in the bedroom, claiming she was resting. Some nights I'd hear her talking on the phone in hushed tones, laughter spilling out before she'd catch herself and hang up when I entered. I told myself not to overthink it, was just a tough adjustment. But deep down, something felt off. I didn't want to believe it, yet every time she smiled now, it felt rehearsed. Like she was holding on to a secret that wasn't joy, but something darker. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and confusion. I was running on fumes, barely sleeping, eating takeout on the go, but Ava's distance gnawed at me more than the exhaustion ever could. I'd text her during lunch breaks, little things like, you okay? Need anything? Sometimes she'd reply hours later with a dry, I'm fine. Nothing. She'd stop sharing updates about the pregnancy. When I asked about doctor visits, she'd wave me off. It's still early, she'd say. I don't want to jinx anything. I accepted it, telling myself I was just overprotective. But the small things didn't add up. She'd go out for walks, gone for hours with no explanation. Her phone was always face down now. When I asked why, she snapped, you don't trust me? The question stung. I did trust her, or at least, I wanted to. One Saturday morning, I woke up to an empty apartment. No note, no text. Her purse was gone. My stomach churned with unease. But I kept quiet when she came home that evening, smelling faintly of perfume I didn't recognize. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Out," she replied flatly, heading straight to the shower. Steam filled the hall before I could say another word. That night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling while her breathing slowed into sleep. The quiet hum of the ceiling fan filled the room, but inside my chest, everything screamed. Something about her story about our story didn't make sense anymore. Still, I convinced myself to hold on. I told myself every couple went through phases, that maybe I just wasn't giving her enough attention. So the next day, I brought home flowers. She barely looked up from her phone, and that's when it hit. Our marriage wasn't slipping away by accident. It was being pushed away, piece by piece. And I was too tired to see who was doing the pushing. It was a Tuesday night when everything started to unravel. I came home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise Ava with dinner. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. On the counter sat a small stack of unopened mail. Normally I wouldn't touch it, but something about the bold red stamp on one envelope caught my eye. It was from the local hospital. Addressed to Ava, I hesitated, then opened it. My hands trembled as I read. Missed appointment notice. OB/GYN department. My stomach dropped. She'd told me she'd gone just 2 days earlier. For a moment, I just stood there, the sound of my heartbeat drowning out everything else. When Ava walked in an hour later, I was sitting on the couch, letter in hand. She froze. "What's that?" she asked, her tone sharp, defensive. "I thought you said you had your appointment," I said quietly. "Why would the hospital say you missed it?" Her eyes darted between me and the letter. Then came the tears, instant, heavy and loud. "I can't believe you opened my mail. Do you have any idea how stressful this is for me?" she cried, voice breaking. "You're accusing me when I'm just trying to carry your child?" Her words hit me like a slap. I tried to explain I was just worried, but she twisted everything. Within minutes, I was the villain, the untrusting husband. The one making her sick from all the stress? I ended up apologizing, holding her while she sobbed, feeling smaller with every breath I took. That night, she slept soundly beside me, but I didn't. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, letter still burning in my mind. I told myself I'd gone too far, that she was right, pregnancy was hard. And maybe I was overreacting, but somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered the truth I refused to face. This wasn't stress. It was deceit. And it was only just beginning. A week later, I was at work unloading a truck when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ava's best friend, Hannah. "Hey, congrats again on the baby. Can't believe Ava was drinking at the party last weekend, lol." For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, rereading that one line until my pulse started pounding in my ears. Drinking? Party? She'd told me she was at home, nauseous and tired. My hands were shaking as I texted back. "Wait, what do you mean?" But Hannah never replied. That night when I got home, Ava was watching TV like nothing was wrong. I tried to stay calm. "Hey," I said softly. "You feeling okay?" Hannah said something weird about a party. Her smile faltered for a split second before she scoffed. "Oh my God, she's exaggerating." I just took a sip of champagne to be polite. "Don't start." But I couldn't shake it. Later, while taking out the trash, I noticed a crumpled receipt in the bin, 2 bottles of wine, dated the same day as the party. My chest tightened. I waited until she was asleep before I sat in the dark living room, just staring at the glowing clock on the stove, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. The next morning, I confronted her again, holding the receipt. "Ava, why would you lie?" I asked, my voice trembling more from heartbreak than anger. She froze, eyes flickering. Then she sighed dramatically. "Fine," she muttered, crossing her arms. "I thought I was pregnant, okay? I got my period a week ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to disappoint you." Her words hit like a slow punch to the gut. I wanted to believe her, but the way she said it so rehearsed, so casual it didn't feel like the truth. Something deeper was hidden behind that confession. And though she walked away that morning, acting like the conversation was over, I knew the story she told me wasn't the real one. It was just the cover dash up. After that conversation, something inside me broke quietly, like glass under a rug. I stopped asking questions, but I started paying attention. Her stories didn't line up. Her doctor visits kept getting postponed. And that brightness in her eyes whenever she'd talk to someone on her phone, it wasn't for me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. While she slept, I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, and unlocked her phone using the password I'd seen her type 100 times. The glow from the screen felt like a spotlight on my shaking hands. There it was. Messages between her and Hannah Long, threads of text that confirmed everything. I didn't want to believe. He's finally working double shifts again. I told you, he won't leave now. So the pregnancy worked. Obviously. He's too nice to question it. I just needed him to commit before I lost him. I read every word until my vision blurred. The woman I'd been breaking my body for, working 16-hour days for, had lied about creating a life just to trap me. When she stirred, I dropped the phone like it burned. She sat up groggily. "What are you doing?" she asked. I couldn't even speak. I just held up the phone, the chat still open. Her face froze, then twisted into something cold and unrecognizable. "You went through my messages?" she hissed. "Unbelievable. You think you're the victim here? You were ready to walk away and I had to make you stay. That's what people do when they love someone." I laughed a sound I didn't recognize. "That's not love, Ava. That's manipulation." She crossed her arms, defiant. "Well, it worked, didn't it?" Her words sank like poison. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just the lie that broke meat, it was how proud she was of it. And for the first time, I stopped feeling sorry for her. I started feeling sorry for myself for ever thinking I was the lucky one. The next few days were a blur of exhaustion, anger, and disbelief. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I walked through the apartment like a ghost, haunted by every memory I'd invested in this marriage. Every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal reflected back at me. The life I'd been building every late night, every skipped meal, every sacrifice felt meaningless. It all came to a head one night after my longest shift yet. I walked in, back aching, hands scraped and dirty from the warehouse, and found Ava on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. "Hey," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." She rolled her eyes. "You're acting crazy. Can't you just let me enjoy my evening?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You lied about the pregnancy? You manipulated me. I worked myself to the bone for a lie." She laughed, low, sharp like a knife. "Oh, don't act like you're innocent. You love your little martyr routine. I only did what I had to. You should thank me you're still here, aren't you?" I felt my stomach twist, my chest tighten. The exhaustion, the heartbreak, the rage, they collided inside me until I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my keys, muttered something I couldn't even hear myself, and left the apartment. I ended up sleeping in my car that night. The city smelled of rain and exhaust, a metallic Thames that made my stomach churn. Every honking horn, every distant laugh, felt like a reminder of how alone I was. I thought of my life, my work, and every sacrifice day and realized that I had nothing left to show for it. For the first time, I truly felt powerless. Not just betrayed, but stripped of hope. The woman I loved, the life I thought I was building, the future I'd imagined it, had all been a lie, and I was left in the dark, wondering if I'd ever be able to trust myself for anyone again. And in that cold, rain-soaked car, I made a quiet, desperate decision. I couldn't stay, but leaving wasn't going to be easy. The morning after sleeping in my car, I woke with a pounding headache and a sinking feeling in my chest. But something had shifted. For the first time since discovering Ava's betrayal, I felt clarity. Pain and exhaustion still gnawed at me, but beneath it was a spark an undeniable need to reclaim control over my life. I couldn't stay trapped in a marriage built on lies, and I couldn't let her continue to manipulate me. I spent that day quietly planning. I opened a new bank account, separating my paychecks from our joint finances. I changed passwords, made sure no trace of my savings was accessible to her. I found a friend willing to help me with temporary housing, a place where I could sleep without fear, a space where I could start healing. When Ava called later that evening, I let it ring. Her voice was frantic over voicemail. "Where are you? We need to talk. I'm pregnant now, I swear." I didn't respond. I just sat in my small, dimly lit apartment, the hum of the heater filling the room as I listened to the distant sounds of the city outside. Rain pattered against the window, a rhythm that mirrored my racing thoughts. I reflected on every sacrifice I'd made, every late night, every bruise to my body and spirit, all for someone who had never truly cared. It stung, but the sting was tempered by a growing sense of empowerment. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was strategizing. I realized leaving wasn't just about escape. It was about reclaiming myself, my dignity, my future. I couldn't undo the betrayal, but I could ensure it didn't define the rest of my life. And as I lay down that night in a bed that wasn't mine, I felt the first thread of calm wrap around my chest, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, I could survive this and thrive. But leaving would come with consequences, and Ava wouldn't let go easily. I knew the next steps would be the hardest part yet. For the next few weeks, I lived quietly in my temporary apartment, keeping a low profile and focusing on work, sleep, and rebuilding some semblance of myself. Every night, I would sit by the window with a mug of lukewarm coffee, listening to the hum of the city and letting the rain wash away the tension that had gripped me for months. But even in this calm, I felt the weight of what was coming. Knew Ava wouldn't just let me walk away. During the day, I pretended to the world that everything was normal. At work, I smiled, nodded, and carried boxes, but my mind was always calculating. I transferred my paychecks to my new account, moved essential items out of the apartment, and meticulously packed a small bag of things I couldn't bear to leave behind. Every small act felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that Ava had tried to manipulate away. I didn't reach out to her. I stopped answering calls and texts. Each time her name appeared on my screen, I felt a flash of anger but also clarity. I was done letting her control the narrative. Done letting her make me feel guilty for her lies. At night, I would hear distant echoes of our past, the laughter, the false excitement about a pregnancy that never existed, the promises I had made to her and myself. It hurt, but I also recognized it as fuel. Fuel to walk away cleanly, fully, without a shred of attachment to the life she had tried to trap me in. And yet, despite my careful preparation, there was tension in every quiet moment. I could sense her suspicion, could almost feel her eyes watching from afar. She didn't know I was ready, didn't know I had started plotting the only way out. And I knew when the time came to leave, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning I left, everything felt surreal. The city was quiet, the streets slick with rain, reflecting the gray sky above. I carried only what mattered: my laptop, a few changes of clothes, and the small notebook where I'd jotted down everything I couldn't say out loud. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally reclaiming control. Before she woke, I left a note on the kitchen counter. Simple, cold, and honest. You lied to trap me. You've lost me forever. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I wanted her to feel the absence of my presence as sharply as the absence of truth she had forced upon me. Her calls started immediately after I left. Dozens in a row. Each one frantic, pleading, accusing me of overreacting. Please, come back. I'm really pregnant this time. I swear. I didn't answer. I didn't leave a voicemail. I didn't respond to texts. I let the phone sit silently on the counter, a testament to boundaries she had spent months eroding. Walking away. The city's damp streets smelled of rain and asphalt, a mixture that oddly mirrored the relief coursing through me. Every step was heavy with memories, but lighter than I had felt in months. I wasn't running from heartbreak. I was running toward freedom, toward peace by the time the sun rose fully. I was in a new apartment, safe, and finally alone with my thoughts. The silence was deafening at first, but I welcomed it. No lies, no manipulation, no guilt. Only me, my choices, and a life I could rebuild on my own terms. And as I sat by the window, looking out at the awakening city, I knew the hardest part wasn't over. Ava wouldn't give up easily. She would try, but this time I was ready not just to survive, but to thrive. And nothing she did could trap me again. Weeks passed and life began to settle into a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. I worked, slept, and slowly started reclaiming the mental space Ava had filled with lies. It wasn't easy. Every familiar street, every echo of our old apartment reminded me of the betrayal, but I was determined to let it go on my terms. Meanwhile, word of Ava's deception started to surface. Friends and family who had been close to both of us began piecing together the truth. Stories of her manipulations, the fake pregnancy, and her reckless spending spread quietly but inevitably. I heard through mutual friends that people were confronting her, questioning her credibility. She had built a facade so intricate, yet it was collapsing under its own weight. One evening, I saw a message she had sent me weeks earlier. After I blocked her number, I made a mistake. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt you. My fingers hovered over the screen, and for a moment the old ache returned. But I didn't reply. I didn't need closure from her. I had closure in my choices. In the life I was rebuilding, I started focusing on my self-saving money, investing in my health, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected. Even the small victories, like cooking a full meal without interruption or laughing without guilt, felt monumental. I realized that freedom wasn't just leaving Ava. It was reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self-worth, and the life I deserved. And though I knew she would try to reach out again, her power over me was gone. I wasn't bitter, I was relieved. The betrayal had been devastating, yes, but it had also forced me to see clearly who I was and what I deserved. Ava's lies had tried to trap me, but in the end, the consequences were hers alone. Even in the quiet moments, I felt it. The weight of truth, the satisfaction of walking away, and the undeniable sense that my life, finally, was my own. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Ava had moved back in with her parents. Her social circle had shrunk, her lies had caught up with her, and the person she tried to manipulate was no longer in her life. I felt a strange mix of relief and detachment. No gloating, no satisfaction in revenge. Just the quiet knowledge that karma had caught up. I walked past the old apartment building one evening, the city glowing under streetlights. I didn't feel anger or sadness, just a calm understanding that I had survived something toxic and come out stronger. The months of exhaustion, heartbreak, and betrayal had forged a new version of me, more cautious, more aware, and undeniably free. I reflected on everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. My dignity, my self-respect, my ability to trust my instincts. Again, those were treasures Ava could never take. I realized that love built on lies isn't love at all. It's control disguised as affection. And walking away had been the only honest act I could do for myself. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without dread or tension, and when I woke, the world felt lighter. I was still working hard, still building a future, but now it was for me, not for someone who never truly cared. I had freedom, clarity, and the knowledge that no one could trap me again, not with lies, not with manipulation. And as I stood on my balcony one evening, looking at the lights of the city, I whispered to myself, almost inaudibly, she lied to keep me, but the truth set me free. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was peace. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like the life I'd been fighting for, my life, was finally mine.